international ratings agency had improved their outlook on Nigeria's economy, citing steady progress in economic reforms and policy implementation. The minister also noted that Nigerians were beginning to embrace the reforms in spite of the initial challenges, often associated with structural changes. My guest is Otega Ogra. He is a senior special assistant to Mr. President on digital and new media. He would help us to do an holistic review of these reforms, policy interventions under President Bola Tinubu. He joins me live from our Abuja studios. It's good to have you on the show. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tolu. Great to be on the show.
Thank you so much. Like I said in my introduction, I think it's good that we take a step backwards to look at when we started with these reforms and where we are today. In your understanding, just like what people would say, no pain, no gain. But what do you think about the present position following what has happened for more than 2 years now?
So I think I would like to start with the context. And the context is that His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came into office, at a time where there was uncertainty and the Nigerian economy was at a crossroads. We had decades of, underinvestment in infrastructure. We had the twin-headed dragons scams of FX arbitrage, FX arbitrage and, the fuel subsidies, amongst other things. And, Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had this very simple choice, continue to patch and use the short-term solutions that we had used for decades and always led to bigger problems down the road, or, do a complete overhaul, cut off rent-seeking, cut off arbitrage opportunities, and, bring down the cabals whilst also, creating efficiencies in other areas of government. And today we are seeing the results of that. Normally, any country in the world that has gone through or that was at that position that we were and decided to do full reforms had always had hyperinflation. 100%, 200%, in some cases, in some countries, 2,000%, like Bulgaria in the 1990s. But due to, a focus on, three things. One, Mr. President decided that we are going to actually try to be more efficient and accountable with what we spend. Two, we are going to look at improving what we have. So it's not just efficiency on one side. It's also making the best use of the other things of what we have on the other hand. And then thirdly, focus on production, focus on productivity, and focus on creating, a great ecosystem for businesses and individuals to thrive. And those three things today, you see what they've led to. Unlike some countries which had hyperinflation, like I said before, Nigeria is back to, May 2023 inflation levels, actually lower than that at 22 points, about 22%. We are getting more FPIs. You can see the surge in FPIs. Hot money comes when people begin to feel that, hey, you're doing the right things. FPIs have surged our FX reserves at the highest in, a few years. All these things did not just come by, a magic wand. It came because there was a deliberate action by His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to work towards ensuring that Nigeria can stand on its own. Nigeria needs people outside the country. We need partners across the world, but we must first make good use of what we have. And that has led to where we are today. Our balance of trade is up, positive for the first time in years. Our balance of payments is also up, positive for the first time in years. And these are things that Nigerians, should be happy about, because what it simply means is that whilst the end is in sight of the pain, there's hope for tomorrow, and we will keep on that track.
I think it's a good way to really start the conversation, put it in the right context. But let me follow up with the fallout of those reforms. When we have reforms like that, obviously there are going to be fallouts. And the vulnerable one, the most vulnerable ones are the ones we are looking at now at this moment. Now, specific interventions is what I want us to talk about. Many will still tell you, well, inflation might be coming down. The FX might be a bit of stable. There might be a level of stability in the foreign exchange market. But that doesn't make rice and beans in the market as cheap as I want it to be. What are those things that we need to continue to do? Or what sort of support, sort of initiative do you think are already on the ground for us to address this very ugly challenge?
One thing I always give my principal, Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, credit for, is is application of a multi-sectoral, multi-ministerial, multi-industrial approach, to fixing Nigeria's issues. You asked, yes, food is more expensive in the markets. Why would I bring food on my table? What is the government doing? And I would, aside the, conditional cash transfers and, payments that are given to the most vulnerable in society, which I think we're doing a lot to try to even improve, both in ways we give them their monies and also the way it's managed and handled. I think we should look at everything, and I'll try to break it down as simple as possible into different boxes. One is ensuring that people have more disposable income on hand to feed themselves, to feed their families, to feed their communities, as well as, invest back into the economy. And how is that happening? A couple of years ago, there was this speech the president gave at his colloquium where he spoke about, expanding the tax base and, making credits accessible to people. I mean, we all know what happened with that. People misinformed the public as to what they said. But the most important thing, what did we do when we came in? One, we are looking towards creating a credit economy. And what does the credit economy do? It enables you to not spend all the disposable income you have in your hands, all the cash you have in your hands, and using credit in a responsible manner to both boost the economy on one side because you're using it to purchase goods and services, and then on the other hand, use that money or that funds to be able to take care of your own needs and use it to plan long-term for your financial future and stability. So you see things like Credit Core. On the non-retail side, we now have the Nigerian Credit Guarantee Company. Only just last week, Monday, Youth Credit was launched, and which is targeted at young people, NYC corpers and the rest. And you also have the Students' Loan, NEL Fund, which as at this week, you have over 400,000 students being able to access the loans, not only to pay their school fees, but getting 25,000 naira monthly, for upkeep. What this does, in a nutshell, is teaching people how to use credit responsibly. The parent at home who is sending a children to school or their children to school now can have that money that they normally spend on school fees, to get other household items and plan for their own financial future and stability. The student in school doesn't have to worry about where the funds are going to come from to pay for his school fees. You that you're working in the civil service, in the private sector and all that, you can actually access some other loans, at, very, very good interest rates, concessionary interest rates to take care of yourself and your family. What that means is your income that you earn, either from your productive enterprise or from being in, paid employment, can be kept and used to do other things, used to invest in stocks and bonds, which are doing very well, by the way, for the past 2 years, or, take care of or plan financially for yourself. So that's on one side, instituting a credit economy for the people. On the second hand is, people cannot, if there's no affordable housing, you can't really do anything. And this is something I even noticed that we have not spoken very much about. Today, you can go to the Renewed Hope Housing websites and get houses for as low as 9 million to as high as, 30, 40 million, across the length and breadth of Nigeria. We are guaranteeing that Nigerians can live in decent, clean environments and have houses that they could call their own, as well as strengthening the mortgage institutions to be able to provide, support to this. On the third end, I'm very happy that the Central Bank of Nigeria has returned to orthodox, financial measures in regulating the financial industry. And we can see that on also managing policy. And we can see what that has done. What that has done now is, you're seeing the banks, as we speak, a lot of banks are almost meeting their threshold, for the recapitalization exercise. What that means is, hopefully, many of these banks will put back most of those funds into, the real economy, the real sector. But all of these things, will not work if we do not institutionalize a lot of the policies we're doing. All of these things will not work if, we stop a lot of the reforms that we're doing now following what some opposition leaders have been saying, that, we should slow down the reforms or push some of the reforms to the next month. History has always told us that when you do things like that, give or take 3-4 years, you are back worse than where you started from. And I'm happy that even 2 days ago, one of the most vocal opposition leaders, Peter Gregory Obi, indirectly, commended Mr. President in his commendation of Argentina for doing similar reforms to Nigeria. Maybe it's not time for them to tell the truth yet as to how things are going, but I'm sure over time, they would be left in no other choice than to be grateful that someone, for the first time in Nigeria's, 60 plus years history, has taken the bull by the horns to put the right things in place, to take the right, measures for this country in terms of reforming it and putting us on a path of shared prosperity and sustainable growth.
Interesting stuff. Now, you would agree with me, as I say, that more revenue is obviously coming in. We see more revenue coming even from the non-oil space, from the FRS, from subsidy removal and all of that. And of course, state governments, local governments are also getting more funding. They have a role to play in this. You would agree with me. What do you think with regards to how, how they are supporting the federal government in, of course, addressing? They are closer to the people.
Definitely. Yes, I'm sure we all know from his antecedents as then governor of Lagos, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a strong and firm believer in, decentralization of power, and and see what he has done with financial regulation or administration of the local governments. The federal government didn't just sit back; it was litigated up to the Supreme Court level, and that's been done. But one thing Mr. President has consistently said, in his speeches and his meetings with the governors and his meetings with his, both FEC and NEC, has been that the state governments and subnationals must stand up to their responsibility. Nigeria has different, arms of governments and different levels of governments, and each one has their role to play in the federal system that we run. It's not enough for the federal government to do all this, to put the right policies in place. It's also very important that states, stand up to their responsibility, local governments stand up to their responsibility and help, together move Nigeria forward. Today, the federal government, as part of its support to the subnationals, has put a target for 8,300, primary healthcare centers, which is normally the purview of your local government, just like primary schools and local roads. Putting 8,300 primary healthcare centers across each ward in the country. That's just part of a larger plan for primary healthcare centers. In all the regions of the country right now, you have cancer centers that have either been set up, or are being built. That's in healthcare, and that's in healthcare. In education, you're seeing the same thing too. We're strengthening the systems, we're strengthening the frameworks to ensure that people in different states can go to technical schools, because now you can go to a technical university, which we call polytechnics and co, and technical schools of technical education, and get trained without having to pay a dime. Those people are going to be trained, they go back into the various states, and the states have a talent pool to pick from, in helping their states develop further. But even beyond all that, we have seen states that are serious about development. And one thing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has done is supports them fully. You see what the Kaduna State Governor said when we went there. He has set up a BRT system modeled after Lagos. The President is fully supporting that. Kano Metropolitan, just last week, the President signed $1 billion, he approved $1 billion, for the Kano Metropolitan Light Rail. That's projects that are going to be mostly beneficial to the states in which they are. You're seeing almost 52 or 56% of road infrastructure in intrastate roads, interstate roads, and regional roads being constructed across the country. 52 or 56% of them are in the north. Most of these things benefit the states. We have seen the President say, we understand that there's a lot in regulation of electricity in Nigeria. There's a lot that needs to be done. Let's follow the National Electricity Act and let's start to devolve power back to the states. A couple of states have signed up today. They are now the ones managing and regulating the electricity sector in their states. What that means, and I saw a southeastern state, I think 2 weeks ago, the cost of electricity in that state right now is lower than the national cost of electricity as regulated by NERC. So we need to see more of such collaboration. You're seeing the federal government support PPP, projects that are being brought by states, both in the north and south across the country. You're seeing ports being built in collaboration with states. Approvals are being given from the federal government to do that. The forest guards is another thing. States are going to be the primary beneficiaries. The mining guards are the same thing. States are going to be the primary beneficiaries. We need to see all these states start to think, in a holistic manner, in a 360-degree manner, and say, with all these things the federal government is doing, how can we utilize it to ensure that we leapfrog development in our states? How can we utilize this to ensure that the people in the various states, gets to feel the dividends of democracy. We are not in government, to just come and take roles or titles or be elected into a position and say, that's our legacy. No, we're in government to ensure that Nigeria can prosper, Nigeria can hold its own as, the hub for investments, the hub for business, the hub for manufacturing, and the hub for prosperity in Africa. And President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is leading us down that line.
Interestingly, I would agree with you when it comes to laws, enacting acts. We've seen what's happening in the oil and gas sector, attracting a lot of investment in that space. We just saw last week the NICOM Act becoming law, and we've seen the insurance stocks doing pretty well at the exchange. We also see the notable tax law, the 4 tax laws that has been also signed into law by Mr. President. But looking ahead now, what do you project as in your expectations as we move on? 2025 is rounding off. We are in the month of August, September, October, November, December. Many believe 2026 is pre-election and all of that. But what more are your expectations? What's running through? What's cooking? What should we be expecting, considering that the IMF is saying our growth forecast is improved, 3.4%. Yes, beautiful reports coming from everywhere, World Bank and all. But what are we doing in-house more to make sure that this is sustained and it trickles down?
So we will continue to strengthen systems, processes and frameworks and policies. We'll continue to create an enabling environment. The president is not sleeping, is not resting on his hours, is not sleeping, and so are his ministers. He holds this consistent, checking meetings with them despite, going to FEC. The oil and gas industry is one industry that I'm actually very, very happy, about. From about 900,000 barrels per day to about 1.1 million barrels per day. Today, for 2 months consistently, we have beaten we have surpassed our OPEC quotas of over 1.5 million barrels per day. So, and that did not just come, by stroke of luck. That's because of deliberate policies to ensure that our oil infrastructure is protected, investments are protected, and investments, the flow of money is monitored properly and guaranteed, as well as increased collaboration with security agencies to ensure security in the region. In agriculture, you're seeing the same thing. We are going to keep pushing on agriculture because we haven't gotten it right just yet. So you see, rather than what we normally do before, which is provide every farming season, you just provide grains, you provide some equipment here and there. Now we're saying, let us go back and look at the business of agriculture in its entirety. Are we going to just focus on agriculture, for output of raw materials and selling that in the markets, or, exporting that? Or are we going to, look at the entire processing value chain of agriculture? And what I mean by that is, we're providing tractors and equipment. 10,000 tractors have already been ordered. Most of them are already in the country, and this has been distributed to different farming communities and farms across the country. We're instituting the special agro-processing zones and ensuring that even the roads to these zones, so the roads to your farms, the roads to markets, the roads to logistics hubs and processing centers for agriculture, are properly done. We're not stopping there. We're also we're also bringing about, agricultural extension services in terms of, providing better yielding seeds, commercially viable, better yielding seedlings, as well as other agricultural extension services that people need. So for me, agriculture is paramount on Mr. President's, agenda. I'm happy we're able to break, the policy of hoarders, the backs of hoarders and those who sought to, take raw materials or goods, agricultural produce from farmers, hoard them and sell them at high prices. Today, food inflation is coming down because the president made some decisions last year, to curtail the activities. We're seeing bags of rice that once sold for about 120,000 naira, selling for between, 60, 65 or 70,000 naira, across the country. And we're also seeing that with a lot of other plants. And these are not just your regular, harvest season drop in prices. For the first time in Nigeria's history, in a very long time in Nigeria's history, you didn't have, food issues in December. You did not have fuel queues in December. That's also because Mr. President is not going to interfere in regulators' jobs to do their job, because he believes in allowing independent institutions, government institutions, remain independent and do their jobs. Energy security is high on the table for Mr. President. Because energy gives lifeline to any economy, gives lifeline to industrialization. Yeah. What are we doing in the energy security space? We're looking at, one, ensure that, the right policies are driving growth there. Executive Orders 40 to 42 which was signed last year, you see what it did. Within about 10 months, it had brought in over 5 or I think 6 billion in FDIs into Nigeria. Today, Nigeria is in the 4th percentile or 4th quartile, you know, of investments in deep water attractiveness across the world. What does that simply mean for Nigeria? It simply means that, you know, the 4th quartile of investments, people that want to come and invest in deep water space in Nigeria, of which all the oil majors are coming back after years of them leaving Nigeria, you know, because they have seen that we are serious. We're serious about, you know, exploiting the industry. We're serious about improving the industry, and we're serious about guaranteeing investments in those spaces. And Nigeria can only go up from there. Whether it's agric, whether it's social development, whether it's the arts, culture, and tourism, where a lot is going on, whether it's in sports, where our ladies have done excellently well in the past, you know, 3 weeks and have put smiles on the faces of Nigerians. I think, or even across finance, mining, infrastructure, we will not rest on our oars until we institute the right things, the right policies, the right guardrails for Nigeria to thrive and there's shared prosperity for every Nigerian under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Otega Ogra is Senior Special Assistant to the President on Digital and New Media. I must thank you so much for your insights and thanks for joining us for this conversation. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Hope to see you again soon. Let's do some evaluation, you know, assessment moving forward, as always.
Definitely.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.